The whole flight I thought about the wedding. I was so looking forward to it. I was bringing an expensive dress home, and my fiancé was waiting for me at the airport. To think that I was going to be a wife soon, at this thought, I almost cried with happiness. I'm so sensitive. Suddenly, I was thrown up in my chair by a sharp push. What's going on? The plane leaned heavily down. Oh my god, are we falling? I woke up on an abandoned beach. In a panic, I quickly checked myself, but I didn't think I was hurt. I looked around. There were rocks with caves and wild jungle. I was scared. I was very afraid of wild animals, and there was no sign of the plane anywhere. But where was the wreckage? That was strange. I started looking for my phone in my pockets, but there was no phone, no wallet, nothing at all. How the hell was I supposed to get in touch with my fiancé? He asked me to always be in touch. He probably was behind himself. When Craig proposed to me, my parents were happy. The rich heiress finally found her prince. Craig reminded me every day that I should be grateful to him. He chose me out of 100 girls. I was very worried, afraid not to meet his expectations. And now, my wedding was only a week away, and I was stuck in the middle of nowhere, hoping to find someone. I wandered along the beach until I noticed a guy in the distance. Hey, I'm here! I ran to him as fast as I could and used my hand gestures to tell him about the crash. Maybe he knew how to get me home. The guy did not seem to understand me very much and only asked in broken English if such a beauty had a groom. Clearly, he was just trying to pick me up. Fortunately, a girl was passing by. She said a few choice words to him and he fell behind. And he's right, you're very beautiful, the girl suddenly said. Come on, I was not even wearing makeup. And Craig wouldn't let me leave the house without makeup. The girl replied that the local guys did not care. There were only 10 girls on the whole island. The others had long since left here. I asked the girl how I could get to civilization. She replied that there was no communication, no police, and only a boatman could take me to the mainland. I was already overjoyed, but then she added that it was worth a fortune. The boatman believes that anyone who wants to leave will find the money. Hell, I don't have a dime in my pocket. What should I do? I was used to living in prosperity and had never worked in my life, but it seemed that I had to do it in this backwater. A group of as many as 6 guys was walking towards us. One of them said something to us. What else did this one want? The girl chuckled, saying that they had a sore point here. The guy would have given anything to pick us up. Are you sure? We're in short supply here. Yeah, there were so few girls here that the guys had one thing on their mind. And then it hit me. What if I opened a course on seduction of women on the island? After all, Craig made me go to women's training. I remembered how they were arranged, and I would make them even cooler. And with the payment of these courses, I could quickly earn money and get out of here. But lecturing on the beach wasn't a big deal. What would the natives think of me? I looked around in confusion. All the bungalows were occupied, but then my eyes fell on the caves. That's right, I saw them on the beach. In one of them, I could conduct classes and at the same time, spend the night there. I needed advertising. I begged the locals for paint and paper, but they brought crushed berries and sheets of papyrus. I drew couples holding hands on them and pasted them all over the island. I hope that the locals will catch the essence and still come to my training. A few hours passed, and I got nervous. Really? No one would come? But then the guy came into the cave. He spoke surprisingly good English and said his name was Rich. He said that, like everyone else, he wanted to learn how to seduce girls and wanted a week of individual lessons. Cool, I could just save up for a boatman and leave. But then Rich added that he needed not just a course on seducing girls, but a course on seducing me. That's where I was really shocked. Whoa. Take it easy, man. I was about to slap him when I saw a bunch of guys heading for my cave. Yeah, my ad worked. I told Rich to get lost. I actually had a fiancé and we were getting married in a week. Rich threw up his hands and left, saying that if I changed my mind, I could find him at the local market. He sold boards for surfing there. I switched to my lesson on seduction. I had drawings of lovers in my arsenal, hearts, a couple of English words that no one seemed to understand, and gestures. I was terribly embarrassed to use them. As a result, the local machos made fun of me, loudly discussing something. The guys left, leaving me with nothing. Well, let them go. Suddenly my stomach rumbled. God, I hadn't eaten in 24 hours. I went back to the bungalow and begged for food from the locals, but everyone refused me. Heck, I saw a couple of stalls nearby. Rich was standing behind one of them, grinning at me. "You got it." Trying to maintain my pride, I approached Rich and told him I was ready to start training right now. The first task was to feed me a delicious dinner. Rich said he'd surprise me no problem, but I'd have to blindfold me. Well, I was intrigued. "Do it quickly." A few minutes later, I heard the sound of waves and felt the water under my feet. What was happening? Then Rich pulled off my blindfold and I saw that we were on board in the open ocean. To hell the dinner! I was going to drown here, but Rich supported me and gradually I liked to balance on the waves. Then I remembered my fiancé. Craig considered any extreme a childish nonsense. In the meantime, Rich deftly fished out some fish with a harpoon, and we returned to the shore. There, he quickly fried the fish on the coals with some herbs. I tried it and was stunned. I hadn't eaten that even in restaurants. But I decided not to show Rich my delight. I thanked him dryly and said goodbye. Let him not delude himself. It was already dark, and I went to the cave for the night. But at night I woke up from the fact that I was literally drowning in the water. A terrible tropical rainstorm began and the cave was flooded. I ran out of it to find cover, but I couldn't see anything. I soon realized that I had wandered into the jungle. Drenched to the skin, I waded through the tropics. Finally, the rain stopped and I could rest. I sat down in the grass, exhausted, when something moved beneath me. I looked down and saw a snake nest. Ah! And then Rich ran up to me. He covered me with himself. Immediately, he picked up a stick and tapped on the ground. Strangely, this calmed the snakes. They began to crawl away. I wondered how Rich had gotten here, but he said he just liked to surf at night. And when he heard my cry, he immediately rushed to help. Rich carried me all the way back in his arms, and I couldn't get over the shock. I kept thinking about how Rich had rushed to my aid in the dark jungle, and suddenly I remembered about my fiancé Craig. Once I was attacked by a dog, and he just ran away. By dawn, Rich had carried me to my cave and carefully lowered me to my feet. At parting, he said that if I wanted, I could spend the night in his house. Not a penthouse, of course, but much warmer. It was so strange. It seemed to me that Rich genuinely wanted to take care of me. Wait, what are you thinking? You have to pull yourself together. The groom is waiting for you. For the rest of the week, I tried not to get too close to Rich. I just lectured him. I was afraid that I would fall under his spell again. And I could not forget about the wedding. So one evening, I decided to check how much I had saved. It turned out that I already had enough money. I'd even stopped counting them since I'd been with Rich. That evening, I went to the boatman's. It turned out that he found out about my successful business and raised the price twice. I begged him to change his mind, told him that I would not have time to earn so much in one day, but he was adamant. Heartbroken, I trudged to the beach and found Rich there. I told him I was willing to give him another lesson, but only if he paid me twice as much. I expected Rich to say no, but surprisingly, he paid and said that he was ready for any task. I was confused and said at random that if he knew me well, he would understand what I needed. Rich smiled and headed for the bay. I only saw him swim away behind a rock. Rich, what's going on? Where are you? I got excited and went to him in the water, but he was nowhere to be found. And suddenly, I saw him swimming towards me. Oh, you scared me. I ran over and gave him a big hug, and he took out a mother of pearl shell in the shape of a heart from behind his back. Rich whispered that he had found it at the bottom of the ocean and took my hand. He said he would be happy to see me every day. I blushed in surprise and didn't know how to answer. So I just broke out and ran away. I didn't sleep a wink all night. I thought about Rich and how good it felt to be around him, but he was a savage. I had to marry Craig tomorrow. It was the right thing for me to do. So in the morning, I paid the boatman to leave this island for good. And by noon, I was at the airport. How strange it was to be back in civilization. The people around me were so serious. I even started to miss the wildlife on the island a little. I called Craig from the airport, but the receptionist answered. He bought me a ticket because Craig was busy trying on a suit. A few hours later, I was home, and I tried not to think about Rich and how good it felt to be around him. The guests were already gathered on the porch when I finally saw Craig. But when Craig looked at me, he was furious. He said that I had no right to disappear for a whole week without warning, and that I looked terrible. I started to tell Craig about the crash, but he didn't hear me out. He rudely demanded to clean up and prepare for the ceremony. He didn't care where I was.
As long as we looked good in the photos today, I broke down and burst into tears. So it wasn't me that Craig was worried about all this time, just their status. I reached into my pocket for my handkerchief and felt something. Rich's shell. I felt like I was being stabbed. I rushed to my room and took my savings for honeymoon. Then I ran out of the house, hurry up to the airport. There, I bought a return ticket, and by the evening I was back on the island. I looked everywhere for Rich, but he disappeared in the thin air. And then I looked out at the ocean. In the sunset light, Rich was floating towards me on a board. I ran to meet him and we hugged in the water. Then I realized that Rich had finally achieved his goal. I really fell in love.